afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for being here. As the voice of God suggested, I'm Sarah Puro, and I'm the Vice President of Safety and Technology Policy here at Auto Innovators. We have a great panel today to kick us off. I'm super excited. We're going to talk about some of the technology we already have, that automakers have already created, developed, invested in to help make us safer, and that to form the basis of some of our conversations later this afternoon, which will talk more about the future. I'm going to introduce our panel real quickly, and then we'll get going. Adam Raviv is the Chief Counsel at NHTSA. Rob Molloy is the Director of the Office of Highway Safety at NTSB. Pam Shadel Fischer is the Director of External Engagement at the Governor's Highway Safety Association. Earl Adams is a partner in the Transportation and Logistics Group at Hogan Lovells, and a former Deputy Administrator and Chief Counsel at the Federal Motor Carrier Administration. So we're a little lawyer-heavy on this panel, but please excuse us.
She's not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer.
Neither am I. And Jim Lanier is the Global Public Safety Engagement Officer with GM's OnStar. So let's dive right in. Just a first warm-up question to each of you. What's your favorite or most useful piece of automotive technology, and why? And I'm going to start off this question by answering the seatbelt. As you heard Administrator Bott say, that was what automotive technology was when he was a kid. But it's still one of the most useful safety technologies that we have. We see that almost 50% of people who are in fatalities are unbelted. Physics is real. And so it remains a really key part of our safety toolbox. Adam?
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to go with rear view cameras because they changed my life once I got a car that had a rear view camera. And they, I think, have extended my life because they have lowered my blood pressure every time I'm backing up into a crowded parking lot.
You know, it's funny because I did not coordinate this with you at all. But the one thing that I always feel like being parked between two vans and having to back out is the one thing I do with just hope in the goodness of other humans. And with cross-traffic alert, you know, now I get that alert if someone's coming. I don't see it, and that really highlights what so much of the technology we see today can do, is really extends our senses past what we can do as a human alone.
Well, Sarah took mine, which was seatbelts, because I really truly believe in them. They've saved my life several times. But I'm going to go old school here for a minute, and I'm going to talk about steel reinforced safety cages and crumple zones. So I was hit by a drunk driver in 2000, and he was in a very large vehicle, and I was in a decent-sized vehicle, but he rear-ended me. And thank God that steel did what it was supposed to do, and it really did protect me. I was injured, but I was able to walk away, so to speak. My son, who's now almost 29, teen driver, he's been in a few crashes. The safety mom does have a child that has crashes. And the first time he was involved in a crash, and I took him to see the vehicle afterwards, I showed him the pinch points in the cage, the steel reinforced cage, and he goes, "Wow, Mom." I said, "That saved your life." He had his seatbelt on, so he was secure. So if you're in your seatbelt and you are in that vehicle, in that cocoon, if you will, there's a good chance you're going to walk away. So that's my favorite.
Yeah. Earl?
I'm going to actually combine a lot of what's been said, extending our senses, recognizing sort of distraction, rear end. I'm going to say automatic emergency braking. I think that we're going to be looking at, in the next 50 years, that AEB represents the one of the greatest innovations since seatbelts, in the same way we look back on seatbelts for the last 50 years. So I would say AEB is amazing. If we can, as we have more and more distractions in our cars, the ability to be able to stop the car, notwithstanding our own awareness, I think is going to truly save lives.
That's great.
Thanks. I'm going to take a little different path here. My favorite, maybe a little biased, is actually OnStar technology.
One message.
Yes. In 1996, OnStar was launched. Some would say it's ahead of its time at that point. It was the first in industry technology, and it's grown from first in vehicle telematics, and when an airbag's deployed, having a response to that, to now it's a full suite of services such as convenience, safety certainly, infotainment, and also advanced driver assistance. And it's also a great balance of technology, a good example of balance of technology and people together. We have over 200 emergency advisors in North America that are emergency trained. They are highly skilled. They're also certified to handle emergencies in police, fire, and medical situations. And so our OnStar members can press a button to access these services. The advisors will rapidly assess the situation, also the severity of the emergency. And in tandem with providing life-saving instructions, they're going to be contacting the appropriate public safety entities to generate a response. And right now, OnStar, we're the ones that have the ability to do this. And I strongly encourage everybody to stop by our display booth, learn more about us. And also, we have a pretty cool feature down there. We have an automatic crash response virtual reality experience. So please come on by. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You know, Pam, I have a almost driver, and I like to formulate it as when he is in an accident, not if. And definitely I'm grateful for all of the safety technologies that are on my vehicle today and that I know about, because when he is in an accident, I'm hopeful that they will protect him. So now that we've got everyone warmed up a little bit, we'll dive into a few more questions. And the first one's going to be to Adam. Can you talk about some of the advancements in automotive technology that we've seen in recent years and what actions NHTSA has taken to improve vehicle safety?
Thank you, Sarah. I'm pretty new to NHTSA. One thing that has quickly become very clear on this job is that technology is rapidly changing the automotive industry, just like it's rapidly changing lots of industries. These innovations include vehicle automation, remote wireless communications, and all kinds of safety features. And they all pose great opportunities as well as challenges. New technologies, among their other benefits, can save lives, prevent injuries, and prevent crashes, which are the core goals of my agency. At the same time, these same technologies can introduce new and unknown risks. And to that end, NHTSA is committed to supporting the development and deployment of new technologies, and once they're proven, to encouraging their use in new vehicles. Although we are far from the largest, we are among the most active and prolific rulemaking and standard-setting agencies anywhere across the federal government. Since the start of 2021, NHTSA has published more than 24 new final rules and has also published numerous proposed rulemakings that are in various stages of active consideration. And one example of our approach is one that Earl just mentioned a minute ago, which is automatic emergency braking, or AEB. After we researched the technology extensively, NHTSA recently published a new federal motor vehicle standard that will require new cars, new passenger cars, and light trucks to include AEB in vehicles going forward. And this technology will both prevent crashes as well as mitigate the effects of crashes that do happen. And it will address both vehicle-to-vehicle crashes as well as crashes with pedestrians. This is the most significant new auto safety standard in years. Once it goes into effect, it is going to save hundreds of lives every year. It's going to prevent tens of thousands of injuries every year. And this new rule is not where we're stopping with AEB, it's where we're starting. We recently also announced in partnership with Earl's former employer, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, a new proposed rulemaking that would extend AEB requirements to also include heavy trucks. And AEB is just one example of what we have done and what we're doing. In recent months, we've also issued final rules or announced proposed rulemakings for areas that include impaired driving prevention technology, seatbelt reminders, both in the front and the rear seats, and frontal impact testing for child car seats. And as for what technologies we are especially focused on, well, as I think we all know, automation is changing this industry. Automated driving systems, ADS, are appearing in all kinds of vehicles, in all kinds of forms, and that's going to only accelerate in the near future. So along those lines, NHTSA is pursuing on multiple fronts how to ensure that these technologies can be used and deployed safely. One thing we've recently done is to establish an Office of Automation Safety, which will focus on automated driving systems and other advanced vehicle technologies. And that office, which is headed by my colleague Bob Krieb, who recently joined and I think is somewhere in the room, it'll be focused on helping, there he is, helping develop the next generation of safety standards. And NHTSA has also announced an initiative called AV STEP, which stands for ADS-Equipped Vehicle Safety, Transparency, and Evaluation Program. AV STEP is designed to provide a voluntary pathway for the deployment of vehicles subject to terms and conditions that will enhance public safety and transparency. And we expect this program to improve our common learning around ADS technology and ultimately will help accelerate our work toward a permanent governance structure for these types of vehicles. Another one of our technology-focused initiatives is to update our voluntary new car assessment program, or NCAP, which has been almost universally adopted by manufacturers. And we've recently proposed to have NCAP incorporate new driving assistance technologies to our testing programs. And specifically, we would expand NCAP to include lane keeping support, pedestrian automatic emergency braking, blind spot warnings, and blind spot intervention. And our regulation and compliance frameworks are just part of what NHTSA is doing to advance safety in light of developing technology. We extensively test and research vehicles, equipment, and software at our Vehicle Research and Testing Center in Ohio. And that'll bring me to one last area of technology that we're focused on, which is cybersecurity. Among other risks, remote wireless communications can potentially interact with driving controls in ways that create vulnerabilities. And NHTSA's Vehicle Research and Test Center includes a cybersecurity lab that helps investigate cyber incidents and researches how to address those risks. We also helped establish the Automotive Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or AutoISAC, which focuses on emerging cybersecurity risks, and we encourage everyone in the industry to get involved in this organization. And I'll finally mention NHTSA's cybersecurity best practices for the safety of modern vehicles, which we updated in 2022. Among other things, we recommend technical best practices to protect in-vehicle networks, including through authentication and boundary controls. And with that, I want to thank you again for listening, and I appreciate your attention.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate that. You're getting applause. So one of the things that we talk about is safety technologies, and they come in many different packages. Some of them are on vehicle or the OEM created. Some of them are suppliers or aftermarket technologies. But I would like to turn it over to Jim to talk a little bit more about different kinds of technology and OnStar and the telematics and GPS systems that form the basis of OnStar. They can be used for any number of safety technologies. Can you help folks understand how the telematics work in vehicles?
Sure, thank you. Now, OnStar offers 24/7 access to our members, to specialized advisors. And our advisors rely on two key components of technology from the vehicle to be able to provide service. The first platform is going to be GPS positioning along with cellular wireless connectivity. The second platform is for data and voice. So going back to the GPS and also the cellular, OnStar services, the OnStar module is factory installed, so it's actually embedded in the vehicle. But there are two external antennas that are also constructed in the factory process, and they're both omnidirectional. And they're engineered so that the vehicle structure does not interfere with coverage. So it allows the GPS-based satellite to have view of the satellite itself, and also better network connectivity with the cellular antenna to be able to find that network and maintain service there. And what this allows is the advisors to be able to receive information from the vehicles and then go ahead and, for example, have the information such as we know the location of the vehicle that could be placed forward to public safety. We have other information as well that's going to come over through the system. And also with the voice and data, a good example is the automatic crash response feature. So when the vehicle has a crash, the OnStar sensors will notify the OnStar advisors. The advisors will also receive data along with the opening of a voice channel to the vehicle occupants. And even if the vehicle occupants are unable to respond by voice, the OnStar advisor has enough initial information from the OnStar module to know the location and other critical crash information they'll be able to provide to the field responders. And while the field responders are en route to the scene, our advisors are also going to remain on the line until somebody else arrives to take over care, because we don't want our members to be alone in the time of an emergency.
Yeah, and that actually leads right into my next question, which is around better post-crash care. As Administrator Bott mentioned, we are all trying to adopt a safe system approach as we try and combat the deaths on our nation's roadways. You can speak to how the OnStar system, those GPS, those telematics, then contribute to the post-crash care component of a safe system approach.
Yes, thanks. We've worked very closely in partnership with public safety for many, many years to take care of people, when they have immediate needs. And with our automatic crash notification platform, this does tie in with post-crash care. As mentioned a little bit earlier, when the vehicle senses a crash, sends the information to the advisors, at that point, the advisors will have information they can provide back to public safety, such as the location, again, based on GPS coordinates, the vehicle color, model, make, type. Also, the propulsion type is very important these days. Is it a gasoline-powered vehicle, a diesel-powered, or is it an electrified vehicle? So we can make sure our responders have the best information to be able to interact with the vehicle, as well as the information such as location and so forth. We also get crash data. Has there been multiple impacts in this particular incident? Was there a rollover? Was there an airbag deployed? And also, we can get potentially a high injury severity prediction. And this is a very important metric for patient care as it relates to post-crash care. This is an indication that the patient may have severe internal injuries, and therefore we can provide this information to the field responders so they can make sure that they allocate the correct public safety responses right from the get-go, send the right thing the right way the first time, if you will. Also, maybe get better in tune with the patient's care that's needed at the scene for the trauma patient. And also it can impact where the patient is going to end up as far as receiving facility, a hospital. For example, preferably a trauma center due to the nature of the high injury severity prediction. Our advisors will relay this information verbally to public safety in kind of real time as it occurs. And also, that's done verbally, by the way. And we also, in 25% of the 911 centers in the US, we have the ability for our data to be transmitted digitally via a technology partner, Rapid Deploy, so that the 911 centers can actually receive this information in a digital fashion along with the verbal information that's been provided from the advisor. So kind of as a backup plan.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn next to Rob to talk a little bit about some other kind of technologies. Obviously, you and I worked closely together when we were at NTSB. We were doing a little trip down memory lane backstage, but some of the advancements that we've seen in automotive technologies and that we definitely worked on are SAE level 2 technologies, technologies that help automate the driving task. Then obviously these technologies hold a lot of promise now for safety benefits if consumers understand how their vehicles operate and what they are and aren't capable of. Can you talk a little bit about NTSB's view of the safety benefits of level 2 systems, especially in light of your recent investigations into some of the high-profile crashes that have involved automated technologies?
Yeah, and I think the board has got a lot of experience looking at automated technologies because we work in all of the modes, and other modes have automated before highway safety, mostly because this is the most difficult domain to do it in with everything close together. So we're supportive of moving in that direction, but one of the key things I think that we always try to remind people is that the technology that enables us to have that level 2 automated car, we've been calling for decades. The collision avoidance technology that allows people who have a moment of distraction to have that second chance to recover the vehicle. Right now with the automatic emergency braking, we're so happy that NHTSA's moved ahead with rulemaking. We look forward to that being finalized. But you think about the same thing with the number of people, single vehicle crashes where drowsy drivers drift off the road, the lane departing, prevention systems are also critical for crashes that happen today. So while we talk about the future of level SAE 2, 3, 4, and more automation, we got to remember that technology that allows that automation could save lives today. And we're so glad to see auto manufacturers moving forward with that technology. But one reminder is that as we put these things together and add them as features for assisting a driver do the task, we may introduce new problems for the driver. And so as nice as it is to have your car driving for you, I'm looking at one investigation, recent, where someone had a level 2 vehicle operating who was operating impaired, and this concept that, oh, this can be my designated driver. Nobody is suggesting that, but people unfortunately don't know that. So we need to remind people, we need to have effective ways to monitor them to make sure they're staying engaged. And I think, there's something to be said too for, with NHTSA moving forward with regulation and creating kind of a level playing field, we don't end up with a lot of different technologies named different things. So that in my car, I have this technology and I tell you how great it is. And you're like, I wish my car had that. And you do. It's just named something differently. So communicating what's in that vehicle, and that's some of the advantages of NCAP. And the board has called for rating of those systems. So people have a real way of comparing across systems. So we're looking forward to NCAP moving forward.
Thank you. So one of the other things NTSB recently did, and which was one of the final things I was involved in, was some recommendations to all of the automakers around intelligent speed assist, which I would just like to clarify is different than intelligent speed limiters. Can you help us understand what the technology is and how it helps reduce speeding? And what are the current limitations in the US?
Certainly. One thing, just for a little background, Administrator Bott showed the figure of 40,000 fatalities. Over a quarter of those are going to be speed related, and we need solutions. Far too often, I have situations, the crash that created this recommendation, driver felt it was important to go 103 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone, hit a minivan and killing all 7 occupants of that minivan. We need something that goes beyond enforcement and education, and the vehicle is one option. As we talk about safe systems and safe speeds and safe vehicles, here's a place where it intersects. That if we can help drivers understand what their speed is. So in our intelligent speed assist, it's a system basically that knows what the speed limits are and communicates that to the driver. It might be through a GPS kind of map, or it might be through the cameras, or a fusion of the two. And it could be passive, where it just warns the driver it's going too fast. It could be active, where it actually pushes against the driver's foot to keep them from being able to accelerate, or puts an actual limit on their speed. Some of the concerns we have with the technology that we hear from manufacturers is that the maps aren't that reliable, or that street signs and the signs that tell you the speed, sometimes they're digital, sometimes they're faded, sometimes they're obscured by vegetation. Those are real problems, but those are things I think we can move towards solving. I know Federal Highway is working on that, because for automated vehicles, we're going to need the lane markings and the signs to all work so that it works together with the automated vehicle. So we made this recommendation that manufacturers, one other big critical part, and we hear this all the time, because when we say to people, if we could control their speed at the vehicle level, they're like, Americans aren't going to go for that. They are not for this whole government control of their speed. But the reality is actually a majority of people are okay with it. It's just in the 50s as opposed to in Europe where it's much higher. But that's where we call NHTSA to work on a consumer education campaign, that this is critical technology that will save your life and will benefit you and will actually make your children safer drivers. one of the things is people don't know. I put something in my map every time I drive to my house, just so I get the reminder of the speed limits when I'm driving. One great success story right now is, like I said, when we were proposing this as a solution, people said never happen. It's not something an American would want. American manufacturers are going to kind of push back against that. We made 17 recommendations to 17 manufacturers in January. It's now June, and we've heard back from every one of them. Every one of them are telling us about the systems they have in their car today that do what we want, and that they have plans to expand that to their entire fleet, what we called for. So again, sometimes when people say, hey, people aren't ready for the technology, I think it's manufacturers who can take the initiative and help them move into that. And I see that happening now. So we were very happy to see those positive responses.
Thanks, Rob. And that really sets up a question for Pam about these sorts of technologies, some L2, intelligent speed assist, all sorts of these safety technologies that automakers are developing to help vehicles be safer. But how do we educate consumers about these technologies? And let's start there, and then we'll move on to talking a little bit about enforcement of the rules we do have.
Yeah, I mean, we have all this great technology, but the public doesn't understand it. You heard Rob say that there's confusion about nomenclature. One manufacturer calls it one thing, one OEM calls it another. There's a lot of confusion. And we have to do a better job, but it has to start in the dealership with educating the consumer about what they're buying. People want safety, we know that, but they truly do not understand. And there's a lot of misinformation also about what this technology potentially can do. And I think about, and I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna drop the name, Tesla. Tesla says we're self-driving. I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. There's no self-driving cars on the road, except for what you see with Waymo and Cruise and others, and they're not there yet. So the public thinks that there's this technology that allows them to take their hands off the wheel and their eyes off the road. We're not there yet. So we have to do a better job of helping consumers understand what cars do and don't do right now. What is that technology? So nomenclature, education, it has to start in a dealership. It has to start also, I think, with all of us working in the public and the private sector. You know, I represent the 57 state and territorial highway safety offices. We thank NHTSA in this latest transportation funding bill. There is finally money for the state highway safety offices, we're the behavioral safety people, to educate the public about this technology. We need the OEM's help to do that because of all this, you know, the nomenclature and so many other things. And I've been asking, I'm gonna put my plea out here right now, we've been asking OEMs to work with us to develop a toolkit for the states to help them do a good job of doing this, and so they're all singing from the same hymnal. That's important. The other thing I want to mention is we have this tremendous technology, but it's only available to a few. Think about the average cost of a car today, a new car. I just spoke about equity at a AAA transportation forum back in April. The average cost of a car is over $40,000. The average, income for most folks is in $50,000 to $60,000 a year. They can't afford this technology, so it's going to take years and years and years to see this technology benefit everybody out there on the road. So we've got to find ways to make this technology affordable, readily available. This is so vitally important. I can't overstate that. So we think about the education piece and what we have to do, starting with the OEMs and the dealers and our members at GHSA and others who can help us carry this message. But we also have to give everybody a fair shake and access to this. This is what's so critical because the fleet takes years to turn over, right? So we need to get this technology out there and we need to do it in a way that is understandable to the consumer and they're gonna say, I want this. I really, really want this.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly, right, the vehicle fleet is older than it's ever been.
Yep.
And we understand that people are holding onto their vehicles longer.
Absolutely.
One of the other things that GHSA is involved in is enforcement of current laws.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit about how enforcement and education reinforce each other in the vehicle and the safety space?
Sure. You know, I'm going to speak about law enforcement from the standpoint that police officers, and I've worked in this business for 40 years. I've worked with a lot of law enforcement officials across the country. They don't want to give out tickets. That's not what they want to do. They want everybody to comply so that we're all safe out there on the road. But when they do make traffic stops, so they're out there in the community talking to people, their job is really to educate and to inform and to reinforce those safety principles. And I say that not pie in the sky. I mean, I talk to officers every day who are very dedicated to this. So I think there's an opportunity in their outreach and engagement to also really talk about the safety features and what's in their vehicles. And it starts with as simple as saying, don't forget to put your seatbelt on. I mean, that is so vitally important when you think about the numbers you heard earlier. So they can do that. They can work with people. Many officers work with parents on car seats. It's a vital, thing that we need to do. We need to protect our youngest passengers. So officers have that ability to do that. They also have the ability when they are making a traffic stop and they see somebody who's on their cell phone or distracted to talk about some of the things that they can do to protect themselves, to talk about impairment and what that means to others. Nobody, as far as I'm concerned, gets in their car in the morning and sets out to hurt somebody. Nobody wants to do that, right? That's not our modus operandi. But we make bad decisions, or we make decisions that we just don't think about everyone else out there on the road, and driving is the most public thing we do. So that law enforcement presence, they have the opportunity to reinforce and to educate about this stuff and to really reinforce with our newest drivers up to our oldest drivers and other road users to think about what they're doing out there. When it comes to technology, I think it's just, again, making sure that officers, like all the rest of us, understand that technology, can talk about it, reinforce it, and really encourage drivers to make most use of it. And I want to add one other thing that's important. People think technology does certain things, so we've got to dispel that as well. So we have to focus on what it does as well as what it doesn't do. And that's really, really important. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. The what it doesn't do
Right.
is almost as important as what it does do. So we'll turn last to Earl. Thanks for your patience. Definitely motor carriers worked on enforcement, but you have a lot of experience there. But I want to shift to a slightly broader question, because you've worked in both aviation and in trucking on the government side and in private practice. What sort of broader lessons from those modes do we see in current vehicle technologies, or can you bring to the safety lens?
Yeah, before I answer, I just want to give a term, and Secretary Buttigieg actually used this phrase, and it kind of touches on where you are. It's the democratization of safety.
Amen.
There should never be a time where a person has to make a compromise between the cost versus their lives.
Agree.
And what we have to do is find a way to sort of bridge that. And there are OEMs, if you look at the services that many of them provide, it's there. We just have to get to a point where we recognize that it's actually a right that we all be able to drive safely and use the technology as appropriate. But to your question, I think what I took away from my time in the Biden-Harris administration was that we didn't have all the answers. And interestingly, it was the bipartisan infrastructure law which gave us these resources that we had never had to actually be able to go out and to actually supplement the staff, the expertise that all of the agencies had with people from across the industry, because we have to all be in a room together, working together, in order to be able to solve it. My good colleague, Bob Creed, I'm going to shout him out many times today, someone who came from industry, brilliant in many ways, was at NHTSA, came to FMCSA, sharing his knowledge. It's that type of collaboration, I think, which is so important. And so I think the first lesson we learned is that we didn't have the answers, and we needed to be able to go out and get that expertise and that knowledge in order to be able to help us achieve the ultimate goal of what the National Roadway Safety Strategy was, and that is 0 fatalities. I think the second lesson is that reporting matters. I give a shout out to my colleagues at NHTSA, in the autonomous, the ADS space, the standing general order. For the first time, you have to report in when incidents happen. But that applies across the board, that we have that reporting, that information. Because if you don't have good data, then you don't know what to react to and what to respond to. And then I think the third, and this applies, I think, across all modes, and it's a little bit of a political statement, but I think that even prior administrations have done this, is realizing that the rulemaking process is long, arduous, and hard, and that's not the only way that you can actually make a difference. And so using the other levers that agencies have, whether it's through guidance, whether it's through voluntary compliance programs, that those can make a difference. And especially right now, as we're at this tipping point where we have all of this amazing technology that's coming out, we need to have an opportunity for it to be tested. We need an opportunity to be able to get as much data as possible before we ultimately get to a rule. And that's not necessarily the goal. It shouldn't always be, we need a rule. No, the industry, and Sarah, I love that you said it. I'm sorry, too. That Pam. No one wakes up in the morning saying that they want to get in an accident, get into a crash, okay? Everyone wants to leverage all of the tools that they have in order to prevent that. We would say all the time at FMCSA that no one cares if their Amazon package, I shouldn't say Amazon, but their package, whether it arrives on time or not, if their family member didn't come home.
Right.
Okay, so in the end, the ability for us to kind of use data, to get data, and to recognize the various tools we have, I think that was the lesson and really the opportunity that we sort of have right now. Because when I have, now not as much, but in my prior life, would go to conferences and hear from industry. It seems like everyone is on the same page. It's just a matter of how we get there in order to best bring it to bear. One last piece, I wanted another shout out to NHTSA, and Adam, I used to call it, NHTSA is the little agency that could. One of the smallest modes at USDOT, but with one of the greatest responsibilities. And I commend the entire team at NHTSA for its willingness to sort of lean forward and to take full advantage. At the same time, I can say this now that I'm out of the administration, I think that it's going to be important that there be some congressional action that actually helps expand the authority of the modes, of the safety modes at DOT. We can't be in a place where we have to prove it beyond a shadow of doubt. To go to sort of, when you look at the international sort of approach, it tends to be they set a standard and then the industry kind of comes along and meets it. Whereas we're the other way around. It's the industry is doing things and then the standard happens. Part of it goes to the American sort of notion of the government's not going to tell me anything. I think that there's a middle ground, and we have to be able to try to find that balance. We can learn a lot from our European colleagues, but at the same time, we have so much that's happening now, but the hands of NHTSA and FMCSA, FAA, are tied because the language is so precise as to when an action can take place, that if we can sort of use this as a moment to, I'm not advocating for just let the agency do what it wants, but to recognize that there is some preventative work that can be done. It can be proactive. It doesn't have to be proven to an absolute certainty. There is a rule in rulemaking. It's an iterative process. We know that we're going to have multiple times at it, and so I think that's something else that we want to do. And when looking at our European colleagues, I think in some instances they might have the right idea as opposed to us kind of in that lagging approach.
Well, you answered the final question, which I was going to have around the international comparison, but that's good because I'm getting the yellow dot here. And I just want to thank you all for a fantastic discussion. One of the things I really feel like I heard is that we all need to work together, and that's what the Safe System approach suggests for us, that there are all these fantastic vehicle technologies, but there are other pieces of the Safe System approach, vehicle tech only being 1/5 of it, and certainly vehicle tech can contribute to some of the other components. I just want to, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the audience, and encourage you all to stick around for a fantastic conversation between John Bozzella and former Administrator Mark Rosekind, which somebody did set up, talking about some potential voluntary agreements, which they're maybe a discussion of some past ones. So
Sarah,
thank you
can
very
I-
much.
can I add
Oh,
just
well,
one- I just
Pam
wanna
has
add
one last thing.
Still, the number one safety feature in a vehicle is the safe driver.
That's right.
That's all I'm going to say. Okay? I got to get that in there.
Encourage you all to be safe drivers in whatever vehicle you are in. And just join me with a round of applause for our panelists.